Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go ahead and call to order the Historic Preservation Board meeting for June 6, 2024. We'll begin with the invocation led by Chaplain Mulberry, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, which I will ask Ms. Rosa to please lead us in.
Chaplain Mulberry. Renee, do you hear us? Renee might be doing something. He's unmuted.
Madam City Clerk, in the interest of time, may I ask Mr. Sheffield to indeed lead us in the invocation? Thank you. Mr. Sheffield.
Yes.
Madam City Clerk, the roll call, please.
Miss Brianna Pierce is not present for the record. Mr. Hollister.
Present.
Mr. Beaton is excused for the record. Miss Vogt.
Present.
Mr. Jefferson.
Present.
Mr. Sheffield.
Present.
Mary Jane Rosa is sitting in for as our alternate today. Present. And Madam Chair.
Present.
We have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to item D, the appeals procedure, which I will now read. Notice any person wishing to appeal any decision made by the planning board with respect to any matter considered at such meeting will need a record of the proceedings, and for such purpose may need to ensure that a verbatim record of the proceedings is made, which record includes the testimony and evidence upon which the appeal is to be based, Florida Statute 286.0105, and also noting that indeed it is the Historic Preservation Board, not the Planning Board. Moving on to ex parte communication. Board members, anything to share? Thank you very much. Let's move on to item 2 on our agenda, the approval of the minutes of the May 2nd, 2024 meeting. Ladies, gentlemen, your thoughts?
I move that they be accepted as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Sheffield. Do we have a second? Thank you, Ms. Vogt. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed. Excellent. The minutes of the May 2nd, 2024 Historical Preservation Board meeting are approved. Moving on to public comments, which are not related to agenda items, and we ask that they be no longer than 3 minutes. And I don't have my script in front of me, so pardon me. If there was something else, let me know. Opening up public comments, non-related to matters before us today. Seeing no one, we will close the public comment section and move on to new business, starting with item A, HPB 24-13, a certificate of appropriateness for a metal garage, decks, gazebo, pavilion for 416 Kirby Street. Yes, ma'am.
And members of the board, my name is Sherry Farmer. I'm a planner with the city of Palatka. I've not been to a meeting before, but you'll get used to seeing my face, I hope.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'll be presenting 2413 today for the certificate of appropriateness. It is on, as you mentioned, 416 Kirby Street, and the owner, Mr. Anthony Camacho, is present in chambers today. We'll start with figure 1. It is the map of the property from the Putnam County Tax Assessor. Shows the location at the corner of Laurel and Kirby Streets. Per the master site file and the Cultural Resource Survey of Palatka, the home is consistent with the frame vernacular style built in 1900 according to the Putnam County Tax Assessor, though the master site file dates it 1895 to 97. This home demonstrates a skilled builder due to the eclectic design and accommodation to Florida's climate. The typical home of this period was a 2 to 2.5 story frame dwelling with steeply pitched gables. This home exhibits the traditional Victorian color palette, which was typically dark and rich, as you can see in the images. Figure 2 is from Kirby. Figure 3 is at the corner of Kirby and Laurel Streets, and figure 4 is viewed from Laurel Street. The applicant requests a COA to make 4 improvements. 1, installing a new fire-safe garage to the rear of the property. 2, extending the porch to the side and rear of the home. 3, constructing a wooden gazebo in his large empty side lot. And 4, installing a pavilion over his driveway. Figure 5 shows the structural dimensions of the home as it appears on the Putnam County Tax Appraiser's website. Note the OPU, or the unfinished open porch, for future reference. Figure 6 is the image taken from the Florida Master Site Files, published by the State of Florida Department, State of Division of Archives, History, and Records Management. And that is so you'll note the presence of and location of the garage structure along the back property. The applicant has provided staff with all the product information, style, and colors, as you'll see in the following pages of your staff report. But for project 1, the installation of an accessory building behind the main house, the applicant proposes to install a steel structure to replace the current wooden one, as you can see in the little red square there. It is visible from the street behind his house. Because of his hobby, he uses the structure sometimes for welding, so replacing a wooden shed with a steel one makes sense for the safety of his wood frame home and that of his neighbors. The proposed garage replacement is shown in figures 8, 9, and 10 here, as you see on the screen, and the colors match those of the main house, so it will be not as obvious from the street as is the current structure. The addition of the accessory building to the rear of the property is permissible use under the R1 zoning, and it is specifically listed under Section 94-141C2. While building materials for a shed are not explicitly expressed in the Palatka Municipal Code, guidance from the U.S. Department of the Interior Secretary Standards for Rehabilitation and illustrated guidelines on sustainability does make recommendations that new construction shall not destroy historic materials, but that new work shall be differentiated from the old and shall be compatible with architectural features, to protect the historical integrity of the environment. They also state that new additions and adjacent or related new construction shall be undertaken in such a manner that if removed in the future, the essential form and integrity of the historic property would be unimpaired. Additionally, these guidelines recommend installation of periphery structures to be appropriately located at the rear of the property and compatible with the character of the site. They do not oppose modern updates and materials, instead just seek respect for the property and the visual impact. These pictures show the owner applicant in his shop using a welder to demonstrate that a metal shed would make a safer work environment. The Putnam County Tax Assessor's website documents a 20 by 30 detached garage on the furthest rear corner of the property and on the property line. The current structure would sit on a concrete pad in the same location. And the following images show the location of the pad in relation to the rear side and rear property line fence. The fence between the properties of 416 and 420 is not a true indication of the property line, and both owners of both properties are aware of this. It's likely due to the fact that both properties were previously owned by the same individual, and they just kind of put a fence up somewhere there along the line. However, the property line does fall to one side or the other, and they are both aware of that. If placed along this line, the outside edge of the shed, however, would not project outside the lines of the main structure. Being that this is my first presentation, I do want to ask, do I stop here for project one, or do I continue on for the whole COA request?
Would we rather have, go ahead and have an overview? Yeah.
Okay. Project two then is adding a porch to the side and rear of the home. Figure 16 shows the view of the main structure from the side. The applicant wishes to create an almost wraparound porch accessible on three sides of the main structure. And again, we saw that as part of the original floor plan from the Putnam County Tax Assessor site. The applicant plans to build it from wood, but has no plans to paint it at this time. The side deck view is drawn. If you'll scroll down just a little bit, the applicant drew what it would look like from the top, and you can see where he has the cinder block columns that you can see in the picture directly above it. Figure 18 continues and shows this side porch. The balusters or spindles would be a little bit different, he said, and he will describe that for you. And then the next structure again shows the north side of the main structure, which adjoins the front porch and the proposed decking. This image is the rear entry exit of the main structure. And again, he has drawn some rather precise renditions of what it would look like from the rear, from the top, and again from the rear. I guess I put that in twice. Oh no, that's from the rear side. Okay. Project 3 would be constructing a gazebo. The third project on this application is the construction of a gazebo, and the owner wants to maintain pleasant sight lines and to limit the visibility of his new structures from the street. The gazebo would be similar to figure 24. And it would be made from the same materials as the proposed decking of the porches. It would be centered somewhere on the north side yard. And finally, erecting a pavilion is project number 4, and it would straddle the driveway in an approximate location there denoted by the red brackets. He said it would be about 10 feet, I believe, or 6 to 10 feet, he can tell you, from the sidewalk area. And this figure 26 is the style of the structure. Staff has reviewed the application pursuant to the Palatka Municipal Code and has determined it is generally consistent with pertinent regulations. I now present myself for your questions, if you have any.
My only question is in regard to lot coverage. I don't think it's machine, but is lot coverage affected at all with the project?
That is a good question, and we did do the math on that, and likely because of his extra side yard there, he's in no threat of exceeding his lot coverage. In fact, he abbreviated his driveway to maintain a permeable structure there. He didn't pave the whole driveway, he said, because he didn't want to exceed that.
Thank you, and apologies, my microphone wasn't on Thank you,
That's
Madam
okay.
City Clerk, but my question was as relates to lot coverage. And thank you for answering that question.
I heard you. Thank you, ma'am.
But apparently no one in Zoom world did.
Oh.
And, yep. All
Okay.
right, that was
Um,
my only question. Anyone else?
I have a question. We
Okay.
recently approved another metal structure and it had to be so far from the property line. Is this one gonna be the same distance from the property line?
There are setbacks in the code and the owner is aware of them. He'll have to address that issue because the concrete pad is in existence. And it is in the same location that the previous structure was on the master site file. It was tucked in the corner, which seems to be what they did with historical structures. I don't really know any more than that, but it is tucked in the corner. If you'll look at figure 6, it shows the footprint of the main home and then the garage all the way in the back corner. And the home directly behind it also had one. And when he purchased the property, he said it was still there and they were right next to each other. And you can, there are pictures that actually show that. I believe you can see it on Google Maps unless they've updated.
Thank you. Mr. Hollister, does that answer your question for now? Should we go ahead and hear from the applicant? If so?
I had one other question.
Oh, so sorry. Please continue.
The pavilion you're gonna put above the driveway, is that gonna be tall enough to allow a fire truck and or ambulance in?
You would have to
It's a
ask
fireman in me.
Mr. Camacho. I don't have any measurements for that. It's a very good question. Thank you.
Mr. Hollister, if you would, let's ask Mr. Camacho and if we could invite him up to come and speak to us.
Okay, all right.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Camacho.
By the way, you did great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good job.
Sorry.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hollister. Your name and address for the record,
Anthony
please.
Camacho, 416 Kirby Street. Okay. Question 1, what am I answering first?
Well, if you would like to give us any additional details that you feel would be important to us in a decision-making process, please feel free. And then I believe we do have a couple of questions for you.
As far as the fire truck, if the garage gets approved, the second driveway of my property will be reopened to allow access to get in and out. Okay, I have 2 driveways in that property, so. No, I listen, I didn't even think about that, but you're right. So that's one of them. And here's the pictures of the original garage that was on the property line. If anybody wants to actually see this, you know.
Please.
It's on here. Google Maps, you type in 601 Laurel, you actually see it there before they updated it. And it's also listed on the county tax maps. You want to see it there?
Thank you. And if you would, please, when we're done taking a look, everyone, let's go ahead and pass this direction so we can. My question revolved around, I wasn't quite certain from reading the application, so this is just a point of clarification. Were you planning to remove that garage and put the metal building in lieu of it?
Well, I need a metal garage that's wider, and that secondary garage has just been moved to the side. It's a portable shed that's been moved to the side to allow construction of this garage if it's approved. Just because like she said, I can't weld or work the torch in that current space.
Understood. Thank you.
Mhm.
Do we have additional questions for the applicant, Ms. Rosa?
Yes, I'd like to know, I'm looking at your drawing. The new metal building is 16.7 feet long. And
Well, that might be the old, I got to see what you're looking at. That might be the original.
I just need the size
Okay,
of the new building.
it's going to be 30, which is exactly what this is, by 23.
Okay,
It's going to be an extra 10 foot wider than the original.
All right, So the new building is the size, it's larger than this drawing,
Wider by 10
correct?
feet.
Okay, by 10 feet.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Camacho. We might ask you more questions, but at this point, let's go ahead and open up for public comment. And seeing none, let's close public comment down. It does strike me that we tend to take applications with multiple projects into consideration by kind of pulling things or lumping them together. I would imagine that we have more questions about the metal building than we necessarily do about the gazebo, the driveway pavilion, and the porch. Would it be feasible, possible, ladies and gentlemen, if we take the gazebo, the driveway pavilion, and the porch, and we discuss those first because they seem relatively transparent items to me? All right. If that's okay, what are our thoughts indeed on approving the gazebo, driveway pavilion, and porch? This vote.
I would like to have a little more explanation on the porch. I didn't really understand with the balusters and the way your front porch is to begin with.
Well,
I want a more of a visual explanation.
the wraparound porch, I'm not gonna do the balusters because it's gonna impede our view from the street. I would like to do the 4x4 hog wire so we can see through the porch. But right now, it might just be a regular standard 2x4 rails for safety. But that's what that was
But
about.
it's gonna be constructed of wood, like in the drawings here.
Yeah, pressure treated wood, decking materials.
So it's gonna look just like a deck. It's not gonna look like an extension of the original porch that you have on there.
Well, it'll be attached to it, so it will have to be
But
a
it's gonna
floating
be like a
deck.
deck, like a wood
Sure, if
deck.
that's what you want to
And
call
it's
it.
gonna be on the side.
Yep, and in the
on
rear,
this-
and also in the rear of the building.
And when you say the side, is it on the
That's
side
the Laurel.
extending from the garage or your garage that you have, your carport?
Can I see the one photos? I don't have my photos on here. Oh. where
I just
it-
need to understand a little.
No, I'm
more.
gonna explain it to you. All right, that works right there. You see where the
Okay, yeah,
picket
that's
fence is?
good.
You see where the picket fence is at?
Yes.
That's all gonna be the wraparound porch. So I can do a floating deck if you want. But that original carport for the original house, it's useless to me. So it needs to be a wraparound porch where we can sit there and enjoy the view on Laurel.
And you're saying it's gonna come, I'm looking all the way to the front, which is Kirby Street. You're saying it's coming out from the front?
You see where the first pillar is, or actually, you see where the red bucket's at?
Yes, yes,
It's either
okay,
gonna start there or
Okay.
end there, depending where you are. And it's gonna
Okay.
stop where the kayak is at.
okay,
So we can
Okay.
enjoy that view.
okay, now I understand.
Yep.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So basically, if you look at figures 19 and 20, actually figure 19, where you see that little bit of lattice that is blocking an opening,
Yes,
that is where it would start and it would continue to the
Exactly.
rear of the property.
exactly.
Okay,
And it's only gonna be as height as where that red ledger board is. We need to actually step down,
Okay.
so that way it's more appealing.
thank you very much.
Mhm.
Ms. Vogt, does that
Yes,
satisfy your
yes.
question?
Thank you, Mr.
Excellent.
Franco.
Other questions regarding, again, gazebo, driveway, pavilion, and porch? Mr. Sheffield?
Yes. Just trying to still get confirm the visual on the wraparound porch. So the existing posts that we just looked at, can you go back to that picture? You're saying those would not be
The columns.
moved. The
No,
columns would
no,
not
no,
be moved. I just
absolutely
want to
not.
confirm that. Okay,
Half
the
my house will fall
columns-
down if that happened.
Well, you could, I didn't know if you were gonna replace them with
Mm-mm.
something or, so you're saying the columns would not be moved?
Nope.
That structure would stay, and you're saying where the picket fence is, that's where you'd end up with
Yes,
adding the wraparound porch, then with the, so you can sit there and have the view. Now to the far left there, because the current front part of the porch, I think, is stone there, if I'm seeing
Yes,
that
in the block.
correct? But am I seeing this picture correct? Are there gonna be stairs?
it'll be, see where that first picket fence right in the middle?
Yes.
That'll be a about 6 foot wide. step.
Okay, so
Maybe
that,
3 steps long forward. depending
got you.
on
That's
the
what I was
map.
confused with this one.
Yeah.
Oh, so
If
this
you-
post starts
Sonny, can you
there.
scroll down?
Oh,
Those
okay.
pieces right- Okay,
Yeah,
that's what it's
I
gonna look.
got-
Can you see that?
I'm
Okay,
sorry.
see
I
where
got
brick columns are at?
confused. Yes,
And then
those
that's
are the
like
three
entrance.
columns there.
Yes.
I was thinking that far left one was starting where that second one.
Yeah, we
okay.
want to be able to get out the car and then walk straight into our porch and then
And
use
up
it that
into the
way.
house. Got you. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Kabacha. Certainly, Ms. Vogt.
Camacho, have you thought about staining the porch so that it kind of matches with the kind of the redwood look you have?
Well, my porch is actually brown, and the problem with coloring it is that when you step in the gray dirt, you see nothing but footprint. So I have to actually really consider what color I want, because either it needs to go back to the light gray so it matches and blends with the footprints, or I'm going to be painting it and washing it all week long. So I have to think about it. Right now, pressure treated, if you don't stain it, it actually blends in with the footprints. So I have to wait on that to see what actually comes out right.
And the material on that decking, when you say it's gonna blend in, is it like a
Press-
form? I'm hitting it. It's not-
Vanessa, she didn't hear it.
I'm sorry. Like a cedar, because that changes, or
Right now,
cypress, or,
It's right now, I'm using pressure treated.
okay. Thank you.
All right, does any more, Ms. Rosa?
Yes, I have a question regarding the pavilion. Your house is gorgeous.
Mhm.
The pavilion is very crude architecturally. I mean, I realize that it has to support itself, but in looking at it, it's going to be very visible. It's right next to your house. And I'm wondering
Mhm.
if you couldn't consider adding more detail to this so that it looks similar to the house. Like instead of using square wood, use round so that it looks like the columns that are behind it. Because if you visualize what it's going to look like from certain portions of the street, it's going to block your side porch to a degree. And like the corner, the front corner of your house is going to be viewed through this. And I just, it looks like a ranch in Montana. It doesn't look like it belongs with your house. The gazebo is beautiful and it looks like it belongs with your house. So that would be my point with the pavilion. I think it's a great idea to have one. I wish I had one at my house. But architecturally, your house doesn't fit with this structure.
And before we go too much into the subject, Mr. Camacho, I'm going to lean into Ms. West. The driveway pavilion is of course in no way attached to the house. It's completely separate. If the new owner doesn't like it, they would simply take it down. It kind of to me falls into the area of perhaps this is not our purview. What you might put in your window box in the way of plantings doesn't really have much to do with us, but I'm going to direct that question to Ms. West.
Right, so the applicant does have to obtain a certificate of appropriateness from HPB for any sort of ancillary structures on the property. So he's going through the right procedure, but you're right in terms of the Department of Interior standards. This is not exactly applicable in terms of making sure that it adheres to those particular standards for architectural purposes.
It does, thank you. And Ms. Rosa, does that answer your question as well?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Would you like for Mr. Camacho to answer?
Yes.
Okay, so for the pavilion, it's not going to be, the pitch is too high for that. It was just an example. It's actually going to be a lower pitch. And it's not going to go above my front porch pitch. That construction is crucial for vines. I'm going to be planting vines there. There's a lot of homes here that has makeshift archways on the front area, front doors. I need mine to be strong enough for vines. Okay, we have beluga vine, I think you call them, but there's a couple natives here that I want that to be covered with. My house has 95% sun. I get a cracked windshield every other week, every other year, and nothing survives. My plastics are melted. So I just need something for the heavy, heavy summer days. And that pavilion with the vine covers is going to help me out. And two, it attracts the birds, the flower, and the other animals that can live in there. So,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Ladies, gentlemen, are we ready to move forward with a determination on the gazebo, pavilion, and porch as Mr. Sheffield?
I move that we approve for the gazebo, pavilion, and the porch as presented.
Do we want to make that a plural porches?
Well, I'm considering the porch as one project, the whole wraparound
Okay, fair enough.
piece.
Thank you, Mr. Sheffield. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Ms. Foat. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye. Aye, and opposed. Excellent. Let's move on to the metal building, and we'll open it up again for questions from the board to Mr. Camacho.
I have just one question.
Certainly.
The wood one that you have in the back now of your property, that one will be removed and this one will take its place,
Not
correct?
at this time right now. Right now, that hoses all my landscaping equipment, my motorcycles, and it's going to take me a while to establish everything that's going to be in that garage, from equipment, electricity, and right now I need it for both
What's
storages,
your ultimate goal?
Uh,
Short-term goal
eventually.
is to remove it.
or shrink it down. So,
And am I correct in assuming that if the garage was to be taken down, it would need for Mr. Camacho to come back and talk to us about that, Ms. West?
Are you referring to a demolition request?
Yes, ma'am.
I need some clarification.
It's a
from the
portable
applicant.
it's a
That's
portable
what I
shed.
thought he said.
it's right. I can move it 4 feet anytime I want. It's a portable.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up. I was a bit concerned, or not concerned, I was a bit confused because I thought that that structure was on the Sanborn map.
No, the original one I showed you on that page, that was their original one.
Okay,
Okay, but they took it down 1 year before I purchased the house. So that's why I'm trying to get it grandfathered back into that same location.
okay, thank you. Thank you for that clarification. I don't know if it confused anyone else or just me. but
No, it's just this, it's the best place for both setups.
Certainly. Do we have other questions for Mr. Camacho about the metal building? Mr. Sheffield?
Well, I guess my concern and there, this was right, your home is beautiful, what you're planning to do here, but I guess the pictures that I see represented here really looks totally industrial. And even though the code may allow for this type of structure there, in terms of how it's going to fit or relate, I'm struggling looking at the pictures that I see here as to how you can help this fit in with it,
Okay.
because this is going to be, it's not going to be double the size, but double the width almost. And so it's going to be a sizable structure.
Right.
They're bigger than a 2-car garage, all of that. And so help us with that. Is it intended to look exactly like it is here with the?
Yes. Sonny, can you open the email I sent you, please? Thank you. In 1899, you can buy steel garages for pennies. You can go to Sears, Roebuck, and other places to buy these garages. These steel garages are available at the homes. They were trucked in, horsed in, trained in, and everything else.
Yep.
If you go further down, Sonny, please, you'll actually see the construction and everything else is almost exactly what we're purchasing today, with the exception is that the crimping technology for the metal has been more approved. Go down just a little bit more. There you go. That's basically one good setup, with the exception they use wooden doors. Please keep scrolling. Same setup, same frame in the inside. The difference is the crimping technology for the steel. And if you go further down, you might have to hit a link. I'm not sure if I attached it. Yeah, no, keep going further down, I'll show you. Keep going. Okay, that, no, I'm sorry, one more down. It's probably the last, it's the last paragraph. There you go, that blue link right there. This city has glorified the steel buildings in its area. Oh, sorry. This city has glorified the steel buildings, okay? One person got a steel building because it was the first car in the neighborhood in 1931. We have 5 steel buildings in Palaca and just in the 1 block radius of here. So it is historically, the reason why we stopped using steel building, it was because of the war, World War II, when metal was precious. That's when they went back to wood because wood was cheaper. But now the technology's changed. If you keep scrolling down, please, you will see all types of steel garages at older eras, 1928, 18. So it's gonna fit.
But Mr. Camacho, that's not my.
No, I
my
understand
view.
that. What I'm
Well,
saying
if
is,
you go to some of the earlier pictures that you started out in the presentation, I'm sorry, now it's gonna have you come out and reshare, because some of those initial pictures, those first 3 or 4 pictures that they showed,
Mhm.
that would be an amazing fit, the way that was designed. I know the inner structure is steel and all of that, but the exterior of those buildings, of those steel garages were absolutely wonderful. And so when I look at this one compared to that, that's where I get lost in asking, well, can we see something like this? Or go to another one before. I saw one that looked something like, oh, there was another one there that was absolutely beautiful, or something like this, but something that more fit as opposed to what I'm seeing here, which is plain, practical.
it's plain today.
And so are you just, are you going to add to?
Later
Okay.
on, I will beautify it myself, okay? I will put little things up, like extra vines, little knickknacks and stuff like that. But right now, we gotta work on my budget, not your budget, not nobody else's budget. But right now, we have
I'm
to
not
work on
concerned
my
about,
budget.
it's not the
I
budget
am-
isn't the question right now.
No, Mr. Sheffield, I understand what you're saying,
Okay.
and I'm not here to argue or anything like that. I'm just saying, this is the price I got. This is the standard, plain Jane, what I can afford, you know?
Well.
I'm just saying.
Something other than
Is that-
Jane.
I'm sorry, didn't realize that.
Oh, she's not playing.
Let's use Emily.
So, yeah,
Well-
eventually I like to hook, put little signs and stuff like that and make it into something look vintage,
Okay,
but
okay.
there's no reason to put that in the board now, because that's years from now.
Can
Well,
I ask a question?
ahead.
Excuse me, Mr. Sheffield.
go ahead.
The door, I think the door is the issue on that because it's like just a 1-car garage. Is there a big difference in price between it being a split door where it looks more like
Yes,
that
$5,000 difference.
but for a door?
Yes, $5,000.
Wow.
And if
I'd
that's
have
if
to
I'm gonna
check
do
that
it,
myself.
we want both doors like that, fireproof, $5,000.
Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Ms. Foat. And I know at a time like this, we're all thinking probably back to other metal sheds that have been approved, and the concept of if this is allowed, then that is allowed, and I don't know. All right, again, thank you, Mr. Camacho. Understanding that the building is sitting on a slab, landscaping obviously is going to be a little more difficult, but I think certainly, some big pots with plants.
Oh, I'm
and-
definitely gonna do potted trees. I'm just not there yet. Once
Gotcha,
everything is done, then I'll get into the landscaping.
certainly. And once again, understanding that this building is not attached to the structure, it is temporary in nature, et cetera, et cetera. Kind of like my thoughts on the driveway pavilion. Nothing detrimental is happening to the house
Also
with
with the
this being
steel,
added.
this also with the steel garage, it's not a permanent structure. It is bolted to the concrete, but say I want to take it with me, or the previous owner does not want it. It's simple as just removing the bolts and taking it out. It's only secure because of the hurricanes.
Thank you. Ladies, gentlemen, where are we leaning?
I think I talk too much sometime on the up here, but I'm still struggling. And what I always try to do with this, I try to find a way to make it work for the homeowners. I really do. But if there was some way we could understand that commitment level, we're not trying to get into your pocket. We're trying to deal with what is being approved and the consistency of the look. Because one of the things we did previously, we insisted upon how the exterior was going to be accented, what things were going to be added so that it was not going to have an industrial look to it. And I want to be consistent with that, because I think something like that, a commitment, still allows for your practical ability to go through and use this in the way you need to for your hobby and everything else. It's just my concern is just trying to meet a little bit or compromise together here to get this so it doesn't have this rough steel feel or look. That's my concern.
Mr. Sheffield, may I make a suggestion that might aid the board?
And thank you,
Given-
Ms. West. You read my mind. I was just getting ready to say.
Oh, well, go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, no. As far as saying, Ms. West, could you guide us?
Oh, yeah, so it sounds like what I'm hearing from the board is primarily the door to the shed that is giving the appearance of the industrial look. Perhaps the applicant would be amenable to painting the door in a manner that would reflect the sort of pained imagery that you took note of on that first image.
Even that level of commitment, because the same thing we did before, the adornment or what it's going to look like from the street, not that it has to be the fireproof pull apart doors, because that's going to be move. I wouldn't want those doors for my I'd rather have a roll up, but that's a very good idea in terms of the aesthetics, to be able to have something when it is down that it looks like it was one of those that you had depicted in your presentation there.
I mean,
Is
I could
that-
fabricate exterior folding doors, but I can't be put on a time schedule. Like once the garage has been put up, I need 6 months to put that on there, because again, you're dealing with my budget. Okay, so if you tell me, hey, Mr. Camacho, it'll be approved when you got, let's say 2 years to give us barn doors, then that's a little bit better than doing it tomorrow or after it's
And-
put up.
And understanding, Mr. Camacho, you're not on a time constraint with the COA.
No, I appreciate it, you know, but again, I would fabricate my metal doors myself. Why it's empty, but I need to run my welders and my electricity, and that's way long down the line, you know.
What I don't know that we were in the question phase still, but I guess we're going for it. In what would your ask be now that you've heard from us in terms of our concern? What would you propose, and what would that ask be for approval now, and that a time frame of X to get it to what stage? What would, because in order for us to approve something, we've got to, we ask people for drawings, this design, all of that other type of stuff. And so we always try to be as flexible as possible. But what would you be willing to make this?
Well, right now, the garage is colored exactly as my house. White window frame, white door, red accents, gray all the way above, okay? The only thing I can do, and to me, it don't make any sense, is to literally put out a false cover for a door, okay? Something swingable. You won't even see this door from the streets, first of all. The other house that was approved didn't have this, didn't have to change their doors. Or the walkers, theirs is, they had a little small wooden facade added, which is okay for their aesthetics. But this front door, you're not really gonna see it from where it's gonna be located, between the gazebo, the vines and everything else. I mean, I could put fake windows in there if you want. Like I can literally window frame a mirror so it looks like a house window and do it that way. So, but you gotta give me time and budget.
Or you can just paint the door to make it look like, just paint them to make it look like a door. You don't have to put sliding doors in or anything, just paint the door to make it look like a door.
I mean, I can do that. If you,
I
if the
love the
boards,
color.
if the boards are happy with me painting the roll up to make them look like a garage door, I can do
Mhm.
that.
I love the
Okay.
color.
I
all of-
appreciate that.
all
That's
of
an
that.
even.
And that's all that I would be asking, 'cause so that it mirrors and looks and resembles your home. And maybe there are two windows on the side there, I don't know, but then that big door is really the distractor there. And if that was painted so that it was a facade, if you will, of
No,
an
that's a
opening
great
door,
idea. I have
then
no problem with
beautiful.
that one. The reason there's no windows there is because of the privacy and the noise level for the neighbors and stuff like that. So I appreciate that part.
Clearly, it's
But I can
totally.
definitely do the painted
Okay.
facade.
I mean, it
There we go.
personally strikes me as a little bit Disney-esque, this ask. But if it satisfies the board, perhaps Mr. Sheffield, you would like to make it into a motion.
All right. Thank you for your cooperation and flexibility in this, first of all, before I even make the motion. But I like to move that the accessory building behind the main house be approved as submitted. However, we would add a painted facade that would have the front rolling door resemble a double opening
Barn door.
barn door, and two windows painted on the side, or is that?
Fake windows.
Yeah, no, we're
fake
not
windows.
installing,
Yeah, fake windows.
And maintaining the colors we see
Yep.
consistent with your home.
Yep.
That are in. Yes, sorry. I always mess up these motions. Go ahead.
No, it was a great motion. Could you also add painted and or magnetic? Take a look.
Oh, okay. Alrighty. Well, painted and or magnetic, if I can say the word. Thank you, Ms.
And I thought I was thrifty. Look at Jane go,
Jane,
21 bucks.
Yeah. There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Sheffield. Do we have a second?
I'd like to make a comment. Mr. Camacho, your house is beautiful. And I've watched all the work that you have done on it. I think you have a good eye and good taste. And I'm personally never okay with steel sheds, but we don't have the ordinances and thing now not to have that. So based on that and based on my past visual reputation of what you've done, I feel confident that you will make it look good. So I would make a second to it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Vogt, and well said. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Do we have further discussion amongst the board? If not, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. And opposed. Excellent. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Camacho.
May I have one copy for the record, please?
I'll get it from you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Moving on in our agenda, under new business, item B, HPB 24-17. This is a certificate of appropriateness for several exterior and interior improvements to 208 Main Street. And we will now hear from city staff.
Excuse me, sir, with the backpack, is that your cup underneath there or? Okay.
Should we introduce him, Jane, before he runs out?
I'm so sorry. Yes, members of the Historic Preservation Board, this is our legal intern, Joe. Help me out with your last name, please. Thank you. And he'll be with us for the next 6 weeks. You can find him in my office if you want to say hi.
Okay.
Welcome.
Welcome,
Thank you.
Joe.
Don't run away. You can stay.
He wants to run, he wants to run.
No pressure. We'll see you later. Okay.
Mr. Cheap.
All right, good afternoon, members of the board. This is, as you said before, case HPB 2417, a COA application for a certificate of appropriateness for exterior and interior improvements. This case here was a really good history lesson, and I do want to give a lot of credit to Mr. Bob Taylor, who's with us today. He's going to stand up here in a moment and give you all a presentation. Kind of look at this as more of an introduction. So this is a certificate of appropriateness for the structure at 208 Main Street, which is adjacent, it's directly next to the historic structure, the St. Mark's Episcopal Church at 200 Main Street. Of course, goes by the name, the James House. I will, if you can see there in figure 1, as a reference of where exactly that is, of course, it's just steps away from City Hall. The former James House at 208 Main Street was constructed sometime between 1882 and 1884, as cited by the city's original Sanborn maps, and a report prepared on the behalf of St. Mark's Episcopal Church by Mr. Taylor, AIA. The report Mr. Taylor gave me was a fantastic resource. It was 110 pages, and that's why I would like to mention that's the reason why it's not attached to your agenda. But if you guys are interested in looking at it, I'm sure Mr. Taylor would be happy to provide it, and we could provide it as well. It really is a fascinating piece of Palatka history. According to Mr. Taylor, the house was cared for and occupied for most of its useful life until it fell into disrepair sometime in the 1990s. I'm sure he'll correct me on that if that's wrong. But the church considered relocating the building in the past, and for, I think financial reasons, it was found to be untenable. The structure is historically significant to Palatka, as the James House derives its name from Robert James, listed as the property owner around 1910. And I'll let him tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. So you can see Ms. Krantz has had figures 1 and 2 up there. Figure 2 shows kind of the current condition of where that's at from, I think that's the street view from Main Street. Figure 3 is from the rear current view as well. And then I have an undated photo here, and I should include from that packet of photos that I sent around, it's pulled from there, undated photo of what the house looked like quite a while ago, with the porches and the picket fence and everything. That's no longer there. Analysis on this. So I guess the important part, the applicant has proposed extensive exterior restorations to the building, including the foundation, wall, and roof framing, exterior siding, doors and windows, and extensive work to the interior, which includes additions such as restrooms and a custodial room, and improvements such as new plumbing, mechanical and electrical systems, fixtures, new flooring, ceiling, and wall finishes. Just really quickly, there are findings of fact. The application has been deemed complete, and the restoration of the subject structure will preserve an important historic building for the city of Palatka. And with that, I'd be happy to take your questions, or we can go into the applicant's presentation. Actually, I should mention too, some of the renderings there are in Appendix A should be following the staff report. Figures 1 through 4 kind of give you a look of what it may look like. So thank you for your time.
I had a couple of questions I'd just like to start off with.
Yeah, sure.
And if it's something that you can't answer, Mr.
Sure.
Chief, then we can certainly ask Mr. Taylor. I noticed on the application for the COA, and I have the feeling this box was just checked by mistake under description of requested work. It goes into porch addition, doors, maintenance, et cetera, and it also ticks the box for relocation.
Not to my knowledge. I don't believe there's any plan to,
Okay.
It was a surprise to me when you had pointed it out, and there's been no conversation of moving the
I didn't think
structure.
so, but when I was going through my packet for
Sure.
the past couple of days, I was thinking to myself, let's just make sure we look at everything.
Of course,
So
that
we
would be a
did.
big deal, yes.
Also, it looked as though on some of the renderings, it was going with like a board and batten to match St. Mark's. But there's also the section in here where we have some product specifications for not only drop siding or Dutch lap, but we also have another one for bevel lap siding. So I was just wondering, is it board and batten, or are we looking at more of the siding that I think would originally have been on the house?
I'll let the architect answer that one.
But you'll be leaving us soon, and I wanted to ask you lots of questions.
I
Mr.
know,
Cheap.
I know.
Ladies, gentlemen, do we have other questions for Mr. Cheap, or should we hear from the applicant?
Great.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Taylor, it's good to see you, sir. Come on up, and if you would, your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Ginsburg. My name is Bob Taylor, 261 West River Road, Palatka, Florida. Thank you very much for allowing us to make this presentation today. To answer your question, it's basically a drop siding around the perimeter of the building, except for the very front. And that's the novelty siding, or 105 siding, which occurs on the chevron portion of the building. The very front, if you look at that, even the existing picture, you can see the novelty siding or the 105 siding. And all we're trying to do is replicate what was actually there. I beg your pardon? Oh, okay.
No, I didn't. As it turns out, I didn't say thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. Other questions? Very good. If you would, why don't you go back to the black and white photograph, the 1920 photograph, that one right there. And if you can make that bigger, Sonny, that would be great. Okay. What we have chosen to do is to try to make the house look like it looked, and this is about 1920. And you'll notice on the left side of the house, it's like a casement door. And on our renderings, we've replicated that in that casement door. Notice at the top, it's not a shutter or louver that's there. It's actually a window. So that's what we're trying to do, is restore and replicate what it looked like back in the 1920s. A little different era, perhaps just a little bit after that, the front porch was added. And it's interesting, as I looked at the Sanborn maps, which I have, I'm kind of getting off the script here, so bear with me. You can see that about 1915, right after Robert James purchased the house, is when it went through a major renovation addition. And I think that's when he put the porch on the front. He did that very nice room in the back, which is cypress siding, and it has a very nice wood grill that was looks like handcrafted. And there's a window seat, a cypress window seat. And some of those are shown in that 110-page report that Mr. Ginsburg refers to. And I have the copies of the Sanborn maps that we got from the University of Florida that shows basically from 1885 to 1941. So it shows you how the house was developed. And simply stated, we're trying to pick an era, which is about 1920, and make it look similar to that. Okay, further questions? If I may. We provided this information and detailed architectural construction documents which show and describe what it currently looks like and what we're proposing it to be. The 3D renderings that we've included, that Sonny has shown us, help to provide more effective views of what we would like for it to be in the completion. Our intent is to restore and reuse existing doors, windows, siding, and trim, and replace damaged or missing products with materials and products of like kind. We plan to rebuild the front porch to replicate the picture from the 1920s, and colors and new materials will be selected to reflect that period. Near the end of March, this past March, we presented these documents to the Department of Historical Resources as required by a task of the grant that the church has received, and they approved them as submitted. So that was the third phase of our submission, and we're preparing for the fourth and final phase at the end of this month. Shortly after that presentation to the Historic Resources Board, I met with Leo Wadeson, Don Peckham, and the fire marshal to receive their comments and critique pertaining to our approach to preserve and restore the building. Because it's historic, there's some things that the code does allow us to do, but structurally we felt that it was imperative to restore and repair the foundations and provide lateral stiffness for the roof and walls and structural elements. So at this point, my wife, Dr. Diane Taylor, has produced a historical narrative of the James House, which I think you got the benefit of. And I'd like to ask Diane to come and present that to you. And then I'll have a remark at closing.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Just as a point of reference, Mrs. Taylor, is that what you submitted your card for, or did you have?
That's right, yeah.
Oh,
that's
okay.
right.
Yes.
Yeah. Mhm.
Madam Chair, I believe it's up to you if you want to allow her to speak as the applicant or not, or if you want me to start a timer. I mean,
Wow, a timer just seems awfully harsh.
yeah,
I don't
that's what
agree
I
with
told
that.
him before the meeting. I told him you probably wouldn't even need a speaker card because of them, they're
Okay.
technically together.
My question was, I will be opening this up for public comment. I didn't
Yeah.
know if you were part of it or this is. so-
Well, that was my fault. I probably shouldn't have filled that out if I was part of the agenda.
Absolutely no problem. And please carry on without a timer.
Well, I think I can do it in 3 minutes,
Well,
actually.
if you've been practicing, then let's do it.
My name is Diane Taylor, and I live at 261 West River Road in Palatka. And you probably received a little brochure earlier this week that's called "Why Do We Call 208 Main Street the James House?" And that's because since 1910, when Robert James bought the house, it was probably known as the James House. But then in 2002, when St. Mark's Episcopal Church acquired the property, nobody knew what the James House, where the name came from. The people in the church didn't know the name. Even today, the people who have redone and purchased the Hotel James didn't know the James story. So I thought it was important that we know it today because, as Mr. Cheap said, it's a fascinating history. In 2018, I was tasked with writing a research on the buildings there at St. Mark's Episcopal. And of course, the first step, because I was new to Palatka, my first step was to contact Larry Beaton, the historian emeritus for Putnam County. And sure enough, Larry knew exactly why it was called the James House. That in 1903, Robert James had a very popular cafe on 100 Lemon Street, which is now St. John's Avenue. But it was the hot spot in town, and he was famous for his fried oysters and he had a truck farm, so he would grow the vegetables himself, so everything was fresh. And he catered events, and he was popular for the theater parties at the Palatka Opera House next door. So he had quite a grand reputation. And then in 1916, Dr. George Welch here in town decided to build a luxury hotel in downtown Palatka. And he secured the services of an architect from Jacksonville, Henry James Clouthier, who was a protege of Frank Lloyd Wright in the Prairie style. So Clouthier came and drew this 3-story hotel with all the amenities of New York City, because Dr. Welch wanted it to be a Fifth Avenue palace. And sure enough, it was a beautiful structure. And an interesting aside is that in 1929, Clouthier was again invited back to Palatka because one of our wealthy winter residents was James Ross Mellon of the Mellon banking family. And so he wanted to build a prairie-style library in the memory of his wife. So he secured Clouthier to do that. And that's our beautiful Larimer Art Center now. But then sorry, I lost my train of thought. Oh, I know. Here. So when the hotel was built, Robert James came down and signed a 10-year lease for a restaurant in the new hotel. And so Dr. Welch was so thrilled, he named the Hotel James. So that's the origin of the name of the hotel. But the rest of the story is really the fascinating ownership of Lot 7, Block 9 in the original Palatka tract that became named 208 Main Street. The first occupants, of course, were the indigenous people who lived here, and their village was right here in the settlement of Palatka, and the name of their settlement was Pelotakita, which meant crossing. It was the shortest place from the east side to the Palatka side to get over the huge river. But the next owner was Dr. Nehemiah Brush, who was a physician and a land speculatist from New York City. He bought 1,200 acres that was Palatka, but he sold it to Judge Isaac Bronson, who we know now built his Sunny Point mansion, and it's now called the Bronson Mulholland House. But interesting, when Bronson was a U.S. congressman, he sponsored the bill that made Florida a state in 1845. So Bronson sold the house in 1853 to Colonel Thomas Hunt. Hunt was the deputy general quartermaster for President James Madison. And he was with the Army in the War of 1812, in the three Seminole Wars, in the Mexican-American War. And when he sold the property, he sold it in 1869 to Captain Charles Stebbins. Stebbins had been in the war between the states, and he was wounded and imprisoned and paroled, and he came to Palatka in the winter and the summertime. And he was the organist for the church and contributed to the city and voted in the city of Palatka and went to Fort Myers and became their treasurer and city clerk. Then Stebbins sold it to Mary Hart. And Mary was the daughter of Hubbard Hart, who was the steamboat entrepreneur and hotel venue extravaganza that was the nascent tourist industry in Palatka. So then Larry Beaton reported that and then Mary sold the house, to William Wilkerson Toller, who was an English barrister. And he was practicing at the Queen's Bench in England. And he was also certified to practice before the Supreme Court in Hong Kong. So Larry thinks that he's the one that built the house because the house was constructed in 1882 to 1884. And Larry found it on the bird's eye view of Palatka. The little house is right next to the sanctuary, the St. March Sanctuary. So then Toller sold the house to A.S. Willard, who was the tax collector here. And Willard was also the cashier at Dr. Welch's bank. Now he opened a bank. So the story concludes again with Robert James purchasing the property in 1910. But the story of the people who owned the house is just as rich as the lovely little house that we propose to restore now. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Taylor.
Good. I think it's significant to highlight that Diane has recently applied to the Historic Preservation State of Florida for a $500,000 grant to perform the construction and restoration of this building. So please help us with that effort, and hopefully that will come to bear. And again, I have the copies of the Sanford sandboard maps from 1885 to 1941. I'd be happy to pass these to you. It's significant to note about 1910 to 1915, where Robert James had purchased the James House. You'll notice that's when the house got really big. So obviously he was prosperous and was able to make those restorations and improvements. And lastly, on behalf of St. Mark's Episcopal Church, I would appeal to you to approve these plans. And I'll stand for questions.
If no one minds, question for you, Mr. Taylor, on I guess what would be our page 61 of 120, which is actually your architectural rendering A1.1. There's a small colored section that represents the view as you look through the front door. And it looks to me like that is the woodwork that I remember with such amazing nostalgia from years and years ago that was inside the James House.
Are you talking about the document, the 110-page document?
No, I was talking about, do you see what I mean, Sonny? Page 60 of 120, and then the next page.
Is it the agenda packet or not? It's that thing. Where does that say, Mr. Yama? Where? Oh, it's the 116 page? Oh, I thought the 116 page document wasn't in the agenda.
No, it's page 61 of our agenda packet.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. And that looks like the structural sections.
It's the part in the lower left corner
Okay,
Lower
yeah,
left corner.
grow one more.
There it
There
is.
it is.
in
Yeah,
color.
Yeah,
yeah.
that is the turn scroll work that was in the house.
That is correct. That's what I did. I took a picture of it, PDF'd it, and stuck it on the drawings. That's exactly what.
I am so thrilled that is still there.
Isn't that interesting? And it's in excellent condition.
Are there Colfer ceilings? I remember there were Colfer ceilings in
I'm-
there.
I'm
The
sorry?
Colfer ceilings.
The coffered ceilings, I could not see any evidence of those. So the ceilings in the spaces will be flat. There are different heights in the first two gathering rooms. The ceiling height is about 11.5 feet, 11.4 feet. In the rear portion where I call it gathering room number 2, the ceiling height is about 10'8", but they're flat. I couldn't see any evidence of conference ceilings.
Okay, thank you. I had thought I recalled seeing those a long time ago, so I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Mr. Jefferson,
What's the timeline on this renovation?
We will finish and submit the drawings at the end of this month. The DHR has basically 3 or 4 months to make their recommendations. Assuming we get approved by the DHR, it would go to the legislature, and then the legislature would vote on funding next year. So at the end of June 2025, we'll know whether or not we've gotten the grant. And we think it would take roughly a year and a few months to do the construction. Yes, sir.
Mr. Hollister.
The handicap ramp,
Yes.
that's not historic.
You know, it's very interesting. When you look at the Secretary of Interior's guidelines, it says that you need to provide for access for handicap accessibility. When you look at the historical preservation requirements in Chapter 12 of the existing building code, it says, you know, there's sensitivity to handicap accessibility, and you don't necessarily have to do handicapped accessibility things. When you look at the code with reference to handicapped accessibility, it says it's essential that you do it. And when you look at the Florida statutes about churches, churches are exempt from handicapped accessibility. 2 require, 2 do not. Because everybody's getting older, we felt like that it was a good idea to provide it. And we put it on the rear and kind of behind the porch. Not necessarily to hide it, but certainly we didn't want to take away from the architecture.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Mr. Hollister?
Yeah.
Other questions? I was just going to say, speaking purely just from myself, I am so excited. I've lived in my house around the corner for going on 20 years and have just hoped that one day something wonderful would happen. So
We do too, Elizabeth. And, you know, part of this grant application, we solicited and obtained over a dozen letters from community leaders, state and local leaders, Bobby Payne, Robbie Carrera, several people had given us letters of support, which I think go a long way with the DHR in considering these grant applications.
Excellent.
absolutely, Mr. Sheffield, sir.
On, if we could go to, I guess, looking at the drawings, and in the packet, I was able to read it on my laptop, but not here, A1.2.
A 1.2, okay.
Yeah. Because I noticed it, because most of the language in here really speaks to like materials, actually taking things off and reusing them. Whoops, no, if you go, I'm sorry, is that?
I think you got the right one, yeah.
But where the A1 has the windows, A1-2 is.
That's it, okay.
There you go. But box 2 on this, and I know you can't see it here, but I just remember from reviewing this, says that the windows with the square 2 associated with it were going to be replicas.
Okay.
And the ones were actually going to be, so what do you mean in terms of the materials as far as them being replicas?
Some of the windows that are in the building, like the very front picture, let's see. Some of the windows that are in the building are not period windows. They were replacement windows. When you look at the 1920 photo, remember I pointed out that casement door?
Yeah.
I'm going to take that window out that doesn't belong and put in a casement door.
Okay.
So that was our intent. And there's like 8 windows that are period, and we're going to do everything we can to save them.
Mhm.
There's a couple of ramifications here that they've been painted with lead-based paint, and the putty on the window is ACM. It contains asbestos.
Yeah.
So
can't use it.
our practice here is to take the windows literally out of the building, take them to a shop, remove these environmental hazards,
Mhm.
and then prime them and paint them and put them back in. So
Right.
8 of those windows will be restored and repaired. There's another like 4 or 5 windows that are just, they're not period, they're not acceptable. And I found 2 manufacturers, Geldwin
Yeah.
and Colby, make a wood window.
Yeah.
That is what I'm calling a replica window.
Okay.
Very similar in design.
Okay.
And so I think once it's all painted and put back in place, most people will say those were the same. Of course,
Yeah,
there's
well,
different.
that's what I was really trying to get clarified,
Okay.
whether that replica was going to be the wood window, because I know
Yes.
they are available from that standpoint.
Yeah,
So that's the intent, and
that is our intent, yes.
okay.
Excellent. At this point, shall we go ahead and, oh, I was going to open up to public comment, but yes, Ms. Rosa.
Just have a question. Going, moving forward. If you need someone to go to Tallahassee, if you need more letters, if you need whatever it is that you need, I would volunteer.
And then declare
Thank you,
huge
Ms. Rosa.
ex parte communication.
Yeah.
No, but actually it would be after this hearing is over. And I'm certain that I agree with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, shall we go ahead and open up to public comment? Let's do that. Anybody would like to come and speak on this? If not, let's go ahead and close public comment. You know, if I don't open it, then I get a little board up in the air that says yes.
Yes. Pink lettering, yeah.
Absolutely. Ladies, gentlemen of the board, do we have more questions? Are we needing to readdress Mr. Chief, or are we potentially moving forward on a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve it. Like Elizabeth, I'm 27 years and lived in the north side for about 15 years and did some homes over there. So I'm really, really pleased to see it, to see such a good job that you're gonna do and the time that you're gonna take. And I like the idea of the grant that you're seeking and doing all that, and like a leader for maybe people in the future, other places. So thank you.
All right,
I
so.
make a motion.
Yes, ma'am, we have a motion to approve this COA. Do we have a second?
I second the motion.
Thank you, Ms. Rosa. All right, we have a motion and a second. Do we have further discussion amongst the board? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Excellent. Thank you so much. And we'll all be keeping an eye and cheering you on. Ladies, gentlemen, does anyone need to take a quick break, or are we okay to keep going? Okay. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our final item C, which is HPB case 23-38, which is a COA for a series of exterior improvements and enclosure of rear porch at 120 South 6th Street.
All right, good afternoon again. I'm hoping the third time's the charm on this. This is the last time I'll be presenting the board to any of the boards here, and I'd love to get this squared away this evening. Again, as you said, this is HPB 2338. Again, this is a quick update. We presented a couple times before. I know I did include the staff report, the original staff report in there. I'm not going to kind of dwell on those details. Again, this is an after the fact application for a certificate of appropriateness for work done to an historic structure. We all know, I think, where 120 South 6th Street is. I know Mr. Carpin, I think, is on the line on Zoom to address the board with any questions you may have. The application was reviewed by the Historic Preservation Board at the April 4th and May 2nd, 2024 meetings. At the behest of the board, this item was continued both times to gather more information and to come up with, I think, a few more answers and a few more items, and I hope we've answered those today. There's a number of things in the agenda that I'll point to. Just really quickly, I reached out to the applicant on May 16th. He replied with, I guess, the most important details here that we have are the list of construction materials that I have written down here. And Ms. Krantz, I apologize if the page numbers are off, but I do have the construction materials from pages 89 to 98, as well as a series of photos in the staff report provided by the applicant. And of course, our wonderful public information officer as well. Peter went out there from pages 99 to 118 and took several photos with the drone. And so I'm going to leave it at that. And I'd be happy to answer questions again or hand it off to Mr. Carpin as well.
So what was requested as far as additional information at the May HPB meeting, that, are you satisfied with the results, with the materials, with the drone footage, et cetera, et cetera?
I am hesitantly satisfied with all of the materials that have been provided. I think we have plenty of photos here. It just depends on what you're asking, and I'll do my best to answer. But the applicant has been forthcoming and has been compliant and helpful in getting everything in for this meeting.
It seemed to me, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because unfortunately I could not be at the last meeting, and thank you, Mr. Sheffield, for stepping in. But it seemed to me that the major sticking point that was encountered at that meeting with the board was the fact that the new columns were indeed square as opposed to rounded, to match the rounded columns on the original part of the structure. My question to you is one of, am I understanding correctly that the Secretary of the Interior standards, the guidelines are, if it's old, leave it the way it is as much as you possibly can. So those rounded columns should never go anywhere. But if it is indeed brand new, don't try to replicate what is old. Instead, make it easy to differentiate between the old and indeed the new.
That is good guidance. I'm not sure if that's what I can't answer that for sure. And I would probably just defer to the city attorney on the secretary's standards, because there's a lot there.
Ms.
Yeah,
West?
I actually do not specifically recall that in the Department of Interior's standards. However, I am familiar with, maybe I should have Ms. Farmer come. Let me just read what she has so conveniently highlighted. New additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction shall not destroy historic materials that characterize the property. The new work shall be differentiated, and I think this is the point that you're going to, from the old, and shall be compatible with the massing, size, scale, and architectural features to protect the historic integrity of the property and its environment. Going on, new additions and adjacent or related new construction shall be undertaken in such a manner that if removed in the future, the essential form and integrity of the historic property and its environment would be unimpaired. My understanding is that it is perfectly acceptable and indeed welcome to have architectural styles that distinguish the different historical eras. So you don't have to be matchy-matchy. The difference in the columns, for example, would denote a different time period that you could easily assess visually.
Thank you. Is matchy-matchy the Latin term?
Yes, that is the technical term.
Excellent. Okay.
Disney-esque.
I'm writing Disney-esque, yes, touche. I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. And moving along, Ms. Rosa?
Jane, you just said something that was very important, and I think we need to look at the photographs of what was added to the spillway. Because it says massing, scale, and size. Look at the photograph. It's not appropriate massing, it's not appropriate scale, and it's not appropriate size.
So please do not direct that to me. You can direct that to your fellow board members. I read the Department of Interior standards and
I directed to the board. I think we should look at the photographs of what was built. And the important thing that we have been reminded of is the massing, scale, and size. I think the photograph tells you this is not appropriate massing, scale, and size. It is not good in any point of massing, scale, and size. I think that's the point we need to make. Thank you.
Chair, the only other thing that I would add, since you weren't at the last meeting, is yes, the columns were up for discussion, but also there were significant questions on the addition, and that is why we had our PIO go out to take these additional photographs. You can see that he spent a considerable amount of time trying to capture the dimensions and the details of that addition in the back of the property.
I was here when the addition was discussed initially. And it's kind of hidden by the side porch, which I think is the feature which is most distinct. And now looking at the addition to the house.
An appropriate time to speak with the applicant?
Yeah, I think if he's on the line, it'd be great to get his take on it. Thank you.
Mr. Carpenter, are you here with us, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. If you would like to just generally start with any additional details that you would like to let us know based on the new information that we have in front of us. And then I am guessing we have some questions for you, sir.
I don't have anything to add. I can start with the questions.
All right. Ms. Rosa, would you like to start us out, ma'am?
No.
Okay. Do we have other questions for Mr. Carpin? Yes, Mr. Sheffield.
Hi, Mr. Carpin. Thank you. Thank you for the additional photos because yeah, we prior to this, we could not see or have an understanding of what the rear addition, how that looked and what was made up there. I'm making sure, I'm trying to understand or look at the windows. And maybe it's not going to be as critical of a point because they're in the exact rear. You can't see them from the street, but the windows I'm looking at on page, it's 114 of 120 that shows the rear back. Because when we had talked before, we were talking about were the windows that were there. Not to use the Latin term matchy, but were they consistent with the other windows in the house? And by this picture of the ones in the rear, it doesn't look as though they are. What type of windows are those? Because they look totally different than any of the windows on the house. Are these wood or are these?
It's
what's the
composite
material?
wood. It's composite and wood trimmed.
Okay. And okay. That was just my point of clarification. Were you able to find out whether, because another point that was raised was whether you needed stairs and then therefore would there be railings added to this application on the side porch? Did you find out whether the height of that porch required you to have a step and therefore would present to us the railing you were planning to put up in association with that?
It doesn't require it. It's not greater than 12 inches. It's a little less. The front porch is actually taller than the side porch.
Okay, but the front porch does have the railing. And,
Yeah, they don't actually.
Well, that's going to be a code issue ultimately, and if they require you to put stairs there, then we're going to have to revisit the addition of the railing. That's what I was trying to avoid. Go ahead. I'm sorry. That was my question. Those were my
Right,
questions.
so he will need to secure a permit from the Putnam County Building Department. And if this side porch, I forget the exact amount, I do think it's 12, but if it is greater than that, it's not going to receive the permit without a railing.
But he cannot apply for the permit until we move him forward with the COA.
Yeah, this has been a bit of a tortured process with this particular property because all of the changes that have been made to the structure have not received a permit from Putnam County. and receiving a COA. The reason is because the building department in Putnam County, when they recognize that a property is within a historic district, they kick it over to our planning department to ensure that COA is obtained before they do their final permitting. So that is where we have been held up. So no, they do not have permits for any of the construction that you see.
I'm sure that in the past, at some point, this must have happened before. I mean, this can't be the first time anyone has ever attempted to get a permit without a COA, been denied, not issued a permit yet carried forward. But it really does put everyone in a horribly precarious position, because we would certainly not condone moving forward without a COA, but here it is and it's been done. And hypothetically, just hypothetically, what if our board was to say, we don't like the rear windows, we don't like the massing, the size, we don't like these things, and we're not excited to approve them? What would happen then, hypothetically? Because that seems to be an awfully drastic thing.
So hypothetically, you are permitted to deny the COA, so that on the basis of whatever criteria that you find, I would suggest that you have that criteria set forth so the applicant understands what is expected moving forward, because they are going to hopefully proceed with completing this project. But certainly you can deny the COA, and they would need to alter the structure in a manner that is in compliance with your criteria.
Or alternately, they could just take it on to the city commission.
That's right.
Mm.
They could file an appeal to your decision to deny it and take it to the city commission.
And if memory serves us, there's a very real possibility it would just bounce right back to us. Yeah. You know, Mr.
Madam Chair,
Sheffield,
just
save the day, sir.
No, it's not the saving of the day.
Oh.
The third thing that I forgot to mention was, you know, when we spoke before, you know, you had definitely, at least to my recollection, confirmed that the siding, you were continuing that same thing all around the house. And so the side there, but when I look at the very back, unless the picture is failing me, in figure 4, that just looks flat. There's no, it is not consistent with the rest of the house. So those are my couple things, whether we're gonna need a railing, the windows were inconsistent, and then the back wasn't. So I forgot about the other one.
Oh, I see what you mean.
So was that, because before we talked about it, I thought you were carrying that around the whole house as opposed to leaving it off of this side.
Mr.
that?
Carpin, did we lose you, sir?
Yeah, it's what I said. Yes, it's the same siding, but the side of the back of the house is not, you can't see it. It's 1/3 or 3/4, I forgot what it is, birch wood. So it's still wood product.
But that's the same siding as what's, like, if you look at figure
Yeah,
3, if you look
yeah.
at figure 3 where.
I mean, cedar siding, one board is $25 for cedar boards. I mean, if you want, and that's an 8 foot. So if you want to put cedar throughout the entire house, I mean, it would cost probably, $30,000.
No, I'm not asking for that. I thought,
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I'm not
Yeah.
being clear, sir. I'm just, it just looks like there's different material that's used. If you look at figure 3, for instance, just looking at that corner, it looks like there's different material on the right side versus when you go around to the back. There's totally different material there, or am I not seeing it?
On figure 3, one side is horizontal, and in figure 4, it looks like it's vertical.
Yeah, and maybe it's hard for me to see in this picture, but it definitely looks different. It's not the same, which is what I thought we had confirmed before. That was my only third.
If I'm understanding you, Mr. Sheffield, the back windows on that back building, it looks like there is no siding at all. It just looks like flat wood.
That is, yes, that's what it looks like. It is, because it.
That's
and that's
what-
what-
Yeah, that it's the same.
Is it
it's-
siding like the rest of the house?
If you see, if you look at the soffit, it basically is the same material as the soffits. And that's what it is.
Not material. Is it the same? Is it siding like it's not tongue and groove, but it's siding, not the same material, but the same look of siding? It looks like it's a flat piece of wood. Am I
Yeah,
correct?
that's what it is. It's one flat piece of wood, yes.
Well, it
Just like
should
this-
match, it should match the profile on the side of the house. You can't, because suddenly you're going from something which is a horizontal profile to something that's entirely flat.
If you were, you see, if you look at the picture, if you were to like side it, it would look really bad because you would get really small like cuts on the front. If you go back to the front, if you go up to the previous picture in the front, yeah, if you look at that, where it starts because of the pitch, you would get really small cuts and it wouldn't look good. That's why I decided to use the flat wood, if that's what you're referring to, and the same soffit. The whole house has the same
That's not
soffit.
where I'm speaking to.
Well, I'm saying that and the back of the house is the
Oh,
same
you're saying
material.
that and the back of the house, you
yeah, it's
decided
the-
to use the
yeah,
flat.
yeah.
It looks like it's upstairs and downstairs. So the whole back of the house is flat wood.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, what we have at the moment, it sounds to me like we have an objection to the windows on the back of the property being, in our estimation, not matchy-matchy. And also the fact that we were led to believe that the new siding would be siding as opposed to just flat wood. Do we have other issues at this stage? Ms. Rosa?
Yes, I have a question about the side porch. I'm looking at it structurally and I'm wondering, did you have an architect or an engineer tell you that that's what you needed to hold the roof? It's not holding the second story. There's nothing above it except the porch roof. And if you look at this, these are major pieces of structure holding up something which doesn't look to me, although I'm not an engineer, like they need to be that big or that many. So
Yeah,
who designed this?
Yeah, I have an engineer. So if you're talking about the rafters, it's standard 2x6 material. That's
No,
better.
not the rafters, the actual columns.
The columns.
Yes.
So it's 4x4 wrapped in 1x12s. So they're 4x4 materials wrapped. You don't see the post that goes down, but they're wrapped. It goes straight into.
Why did you choose to do it that way? It's very heavy. I mean, if you look at the front of your house, which is gorgeous, the way it was done is light.
What do you mean by heavy?
I'm just talking about a visual effect. If you look at these, even if they were painted white right now, they would still
Mhm.
look very cumbersome compared to the rest of the historic structure. And I'm not talking about replicating it. I'm just talking about using another vernacular other than the round traditional column. These are very large for spanning. And you're now telling me that they're bigger than they need to be to actually support the roof. Is that what you're telling me?
I disagree with you. I think it looks good. I mean, it's a matter of opinion, but I disagree with you. I mean, it's not, if you probably need to go look at the property. I mean, pictures doesn't always like reflect it accurate. To me, it fits the size. The design fit the size of the roof and the pitch. I mean, there's many properties that they go with either a 10x10 column or 12x12 column. for smaller size porches.
Okay, of course, it is an opinion and you're entitled to yours and I'm entitled to mine. If you are indeed an engineer, why is it that you never applied for building permission for
I didn't
any of
say I
these
was an
additions to your
engineer.
house?
I said I had an engineer design, but I didn't say I was an engineer.
Okay, and he did not tell you that you were required by law?
Ms. Reza, I think at this point, we have literally driven it home to this applicant that he should have gotten the COA before he attempted to get the permit, and not getting either is just not a happy moment. However, at this point, I feel as though we basically have some options. One option would be to approve as presented and let this applicant move forward to the hurdle of getting the permitting sorted out, which would catch items such as stairs necessary, railings necessary, et cetera, et cetera. That's option one. Option two, we could deny it, and then he could appeal it to the city commission, and we could see what happened from there. Option number three is to tell him to please come back and try again in July. Those are our options as I see it. Am I incorrect? It truly is the.
What would the applicant do if he comes back?
Well,
Change their plan, or?
I don't know, but I'm saying that in order for us to move forward, we do have three options: approve it, deny it, or table it to the next meeting, unless I'm not understanding correctly.
You could approve with conditions. So for example, and I'm just pulling this out of my hat, but the windows, if you do not think that they meet your standards, you could require that they be replaced with historical looking windows.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I should have mentioned approve with, let's pick the parts of the project that we do have problems with, and let's try to come to some kind of a decision.
Can I ask a question, please?
Certainly,
To
Ms.
Jane.
Vogt.
Thank you, to Jane. If we approve for the certificate of appropriateness, we're just, if I understand it, I don't understand it, so I want to make sure I do. We're just approving the fact of that we're saying, okay, we're going to give him a certificate of appropriateness, but we're not approving the fact that they're, the windows are not correct and that he didn't pull permits or any of that. We're just saying, okay, we're going to give you a certificate of appropriateness, and now building and zoning and all of that will handle those issues that we have problems with.
No.
We have to have conditions.
So for example, let's go with the windows. For example, these windows quite possibly meet code, Florida building code, which is different than the standards that you have before you, which are the Secretary of Interior's standards. So if the windows meet Florida's building code, they will get their permit. That's it. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Now I understand.
Okay, I have, Madam Chair, oh, were you finished? Ms.?
Yes, I
Oh,
am. Thank
okay.
you. Thank you.
All right. I'm just struggling from the standpoint of, because I just believe, because if I look at the picture that's up right now, I'm still thinking because to me, it was a simple ask to say, make sure you double check as far as the height of the porch and whether stairs or a railing would be required, and you come back next month. And that would have shown willingness to really work with us and comply. So I'm struggling a bit, because when I look at this board, the board that's going across that's probably at least 8 inches, if not 10, right up underneath the porch. Then you've got the slight supporting there that I know is at another 6 to 8. If you add those up, that's going to exceed the 12. So what I'm struggling with here is the willingness to work with us, because believe me, we're trying to work with you on this. So a condition of mine, we would need to point out in our certificate of appropriateness, the possible need for a railing, and that be, he'd have to come back for approval of that. So this would put that in circle, but I was disappointed when I got the pictures of the back, because I really thought that you had confirmed that the paneling was going all the way around. I could honestly, I'm only one vote here. I could honestly say, okay, the windows don't exactly match the rest of, but it's at the very rear of the home and you cannot see it. But there just seems to be a continued pattern here of, I don't see the steps to help comply with what we're requesting, and I'm struggling with that.
Thank you. Other comments? Ms. Rosa?
Yes, we're usually very strict when people come to us. I don't vote at all these meetings, but I come to most of them. And this is one of the oldest homes in Palatka. And quite frankly, if we allow this to just be as it is, I think we're setting a precedent for other things to come to us, which are not as they should be. And then we've opened a can of worms, I believe.
Do we agree that the opportunity would be to put conditions on the approval for the COA, and those conditions would be siding to match, would be windows? Are there other issues?
I would agree that we should put this forward, because we're really at that point now. We're going to the commission and appealing, coming back is just, there's just, to me, no point in it. So I think that we should do it with conditions, and each condition needs to be talked about and shortly talked about it, and say exactly, so we don't miss anything. And then I would be willing to go forward on that. If anybody else is.
Mr. Jefferson?
I think that the back could be a board and batten, and that would be easier for the homeowner than putting new siding or putting siding over that. If you think of the kitchen entrance of a home, that might have been, a little different in the back. The windows, I totally do not care for at all. So maybe we can help him here and he helps us in another section.
Mr. Hollister?
Minute issue, but the cans, the lights on the place, that's not historic at all.
No, from the rear, it doesn't look like a historic home at all. That's what it's troubling me, but.
The can lights, yeah.
I think we need to make a list.
Look on page 120, Mr. Jefferson.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe Ms. Vogt is making a list.
I'm writing down things that I know
Okay.
that have been said.
And I think that's
And-
fantastic.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that might help us to move forward. My recollection, the windows, the siding, as Mr. Hollister just pointed out,
Can lights.
the can lights.
We didn't, we hadn't come up with a conclusion on the columns in reference to, she was saying size and mass and so on. So we have to decide if that's something or not.
I'd like to point out, if you look at page 109 of 120, which is the side view of the porch, I don't understand the relationship of why you have two columns, a big space, then three, then two, then you turn the corner and there are two more in the front. I mean, this elevation is not pretty and kind of nonsensical.
I mean, I could just sell the house because all you guys are doing right now is just beating on everything. To be quite honest, I'm just demotivated. I could spend my money somewhere else. I mean, it doesn't matter at this point to me. I'll just sell the house. I won't do anything to it. Somebody else could deal with this problem.
Okay. Wow, Ms. West, got anything for us?
Look, after the fact permitting is never fun, right?
Yeah,
and
we
that's-
talked about this like 5 times. I told you I bought the house not knowing it was a historic process. And I tell you, I mean, this has been the worst county to work with. I mean, I've built houses before. I did a lot of different things, but this is unbelievable. Like this process, it's not a good one, not a good experience. Don't think I will buy another property in Florida. I don't live in Florida, so I don't think I would buy anything around Putnam County for certain. This has been a nightmare.
Okay,
I
so
mean, yeah, if all the things you guys pointed out, I can point out 10 homes that has the same exact thing in the same areas. I mean, I could point out people have vinyl windows. I could point out people have square columns. Homes are collapsing. I mean, it's just nonsense.
If you're finished for the moment, sir, Ms. West, I believe you
Sure.
were.
So in furtherance of what Ms. Vogt is trying to accomplish here in terms of going forward with issuing a COA, perhaps you'd like to break it down in terms of subject matter with your proposed conditions as you move forward to issue this. So for example, your siding issue, your windows, and whatever conditions you attach so you can move forward on the issuance.
Ms. Vogt.
Yes, I have a list here and people on the board can decide. I want to work with you. I think some of the work that you've done is nice. I'm happy that you're investing here and you want to do that. I'm in agreement with you that there are a lot of houses that don't look very good and have a lot of problems. And what we're attempting to do is to try to make things better and make the neighborhood better and stuff, which is good for your property and investment and so on and so forth. So I apologize if it seems like we're nitpicking. We're just trying to get it right and work with you. So if you'd be a little patient, a little bit more, we're trying to get there. I know that I am.
All right, Ms. Vogt, I'm going to borrow your list. Number 1 was the can lights. Number 2 was the rear windows. Number 3 was you have siding in back, but actually, as Mr. Sheffield pointed out, we have siding concerns all around. And then 4th was the columns as relates to the amount of columns.
And anything else. I was just listing
Yep,
things
and-
that people were saying.
So are we seeing anything? Are we seeing any way that we can move forward with some recommendations of how to go about this?
Mr. Jefferson suggested that board and batten on the back. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just putting it out here for discussion so we get started.
All right, in the interest of moving forward and creating a compromise in areas where we feel that we can, does anyone else have an objection to the board and batten style of siding on the rear of the house? Okay, no one has an objection or no one's, yeah, okay. Well, I would say that perhaps that is a place to start. And perhaps since Mr. Jefferson, you put it out there, perhaps you would like to make a motion as to,
I'd like to make a motion that we approve that section of the house on the condition that a board and batten design be incorporated in any area of the back of the house that is not the clapboard.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Sheffield. We have a motion and a second. And let's go ahead and repeat that motion, Sunny.
Thank you. Motion by Mr. Jefferson to approve that section of the house on the condition that a board and batten design be incorporated in any area on the back of the house that is not clapboard.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, let's go ahead and all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? Okay, we've gotten through that.
Motion passed unanimously.
Motion, sorry, I guess that was. Let's move to can lights. Is there some kind of a lens that could be not really put over a can light? I mean, it would be a question of taking lights out and coming up with some other type of light that would be more aesthetically pretty, pleasing, better suited to the period of the home. You're really not going to see a lot of lights underneath those areas on historic homes. So I don't know, where are we going with that?
That's a hard fix because he's already.
I'm okay with the lights, the
I-
can lights.
I'd leave the lights. It's not what we would have approved, but I don't know how he gets around that one.
All right, if we are okay with something, do we necessarily need to make a motion or do we just keep going? Ms. West? Okay, let's move on to the rear windows. How are we feeling about those? I would say just personally, I have more of an issue with the rear windows than I do with the columns. I don't know if that helps anybody, just knowing kind of how I feel about it. But Mr. Sheffield.
I too, was more concerned about the windows than the columns. However, I'm trying to give, some leeway in that they will not be seen. I'm trying to think in my mind, it looks like they won't be seen except by the person in the back of him. They would not be seen driving by the home from the front of the home or the other side. If these same windows had been put on the side where the new porch is, there would be no way I'd be, but even if they're back there, no one else is gonna see them, and we're really trying to work with it. I wouldn't force the issue on the windows would be my deal.
All right, other board members, what are thoughts on the rear windows, please?
Does that open up in the future for anybody doing the same on the windows? That would be my only concern.
I hear you.
That's my only concern.
And I hear you. That's a valid concern.
I mean, yes, when we set a precedent, we set a precedent. We could argue all day that this was a huge case of extenuating circumstances that we don't normally have before us, and then the homeowner threatened to leave town and never come back. But it does indeed establish a precedent. We can't tell the next person that we don't care for their windows. And as you all know, and I don't mean that to sound, as you all know, as I believe most people know, I'm not a big advocate of, oh, well, it's the back of the house. You know, that's just never been something we've talked about items in the past, but well, you can't see it. To me, it's still the structure, and the structure is the most important thing. Mr. Sheffield.
Point well taken.
So where does that leave us on the windows? Can we do a little bit of a straw poll? Is that possible? Who's okay with not really, okay? That doesn't really help us. I would say that at this point, someone would need to make a motion about the windows and see if we can get a second and see we can move forward. Mr. Jefferson.
I just did a little drawing on figure 4. Since there are 8 skinny windows, if they were replaced by 4 windows that looked a little more period, that would be an easier pill to swallow from a construction standpoint. Page 100.
I gotcha. Still not actually, well.
No, I'm
okay.
saying replace them, but you could replace them with 4 windows. Each one of those, they're not millions, but the support are necessary. There don't need to be 8 windows there. You could put 4, you know, without ripping out the whole thing, just take out 4 supports and put in new windows.
All right, well, looks like you might be getting some head nods. So would you like to go ahead and make that into a motion, Mr. Jefferson?
I make a motion that we approve the back of the house if the 8 windows are adjusted so that there are 4 windows that are more in keeping with the period home.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second the motion.
Thank you. Ms. Krantz, would you mind giving us a read?
Motion by Mr. Jefferson to approve the back of the house if the windows are adjusted so that there are 4 windows more in keeping with the period of the home.
Any discussion? All right. Madam City Clerk, I'm going to ask for a roll call vote on this. Thank you.
Mr. Hollister.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Vogt.
Sorry, it's taking me a moment.
I'm patient.
Okay, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Sheffield.
Yes.
Ms. Rosa.
Yes.
Did I say Mr. Jefferson? I'm sorry. I know I'm supposed to call you last, but I think I skipped him because he made the motion. Mr. Jefferson.
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry. And Chair Van Rensburg.
No.
The motion passed with Chair Van Rensburg dissenting.
Thank you. Let's move now to the issue or our thoughts, or hopefully moving forward in some sort of way on the columns. Mr. Jefferson.
I think that the 3 columns on the Oak Street side break the symmetry of that porch. And my question is, can that be adjusted so the columns on that side of the house are the same? Not knowing what the supports are, does each column have a 4x4 that is boxed in, or was that just a third one put for some other reason? So that's a question, I guess, to the homeowner.
Mr. Carpenter, are you still with us?
At this point, I'm going to get off the call. You guys can make a decision. I'm going to sell the house. I'm not doing anything else to it. So if you guys deny it, knock yourselves out. I'll put it to list tomorrow, next week, whatever. This is not a process I want to deal with. Somebody else to take on this process. I'm not investing not a penny more in this property. So if I could leave, excuse myself, you guys can make a decision on your own.
Of course you can, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to advise that you deny the COA.
Madam Chair, there is a motion on the floor. He'll need to retract his motion.
Bring us back to point, please.
The motion that's, wait a minute.
I thought we had just started dealing with the columns.
You're right. I thought I had Mr. Jefferson motioned and then I went ... Sorry.
Okay. Thank you. We do not have a motion on the table. However, it has come to our advisement from our city attorney, Jane West, that how,
Can I ask?
Sure.
Because if, what would,
and I'm so
Go
sorry,
ahead.
but can we adjourn for 1 minute? Just
Yeah.
let me
Can't-
run to the bathroom.
Yep.
Recess.
Recess.
Okay, let's just All right. Thank you very much for allowing that short recess. I think we all needed to just get stuff done there. Okay, coming back to the meeting, Ms. West had a suggestion. So let's move back to that and hear where.
Sure, and let me just explain my reasoning a little bit. I picked up on the fact that the board was hesitant to deny the COA despite the fact that I feel like many of you were leaning towards that direction. And the reason you are hesitant to do a denial is because in your past recent experience that goes up to the city commission and it just gets remanded back and it's very circular. And I understand that concern, given the applicant's with withdrawal from even participating in this discussion. It is my opinion, if he moves forward with his threat to sell the property, that I think you're in a comfortable position moving forward on any potential appeal. So if it is your inclination initially to deny the COA, then I suggest you move forward with that inclination. It does not look like you have the cooperation of the applicant to even answer basic questions on, for example, the third column on the porch. So.
Let me ask you this. Would that nullify the decisions that we have made that I felt like we made with a lot of us being very uncomfortable making them? Would it nullify those?
Just an outright denial of the entire COA.
Okay. Well, that has been put out there for our consideration. So at this point, if someone would like to go that direction, yes, Ms. Vogt.
I'd make a motion to deny the COA.
Okay, we have a motion to deny and we have a second. Thank you, Mr. Hollister. Discussion amongst the board? If not, let's go ahead and do a roll call again, if we could. Madam City Clerk?
Mr. Hollister.
Okay, so that would be yes.
Yeah, that would be yes.
Yeah. Don't give it to me.
Ms. Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Sheffield,
Yes.
Ms. Rosa,
Yes.
Chair Van Rensburg.
Yes,
Motion passed unanimously.
thank you. Seeing, ladies and gentlemen, as it is now 6:10, we do have.
There it is.
Like a gavel.
We do have a couple other things on the agenda, and I have a feeling one of them is ordinance number 1409, which I don't believe any of us have had a moment to take a look at. So I would suggest that we take this information home with us, study it, and revisit this at the next meeting. So if you were in agreement with me, let's make a motion to, to.
Are we just looking for feedback?
I'm not, and this was, it looks like a discussion, a discussion that Mr. Jefferson initiated requesting options to protect the facades of buildings in the business district. That looks like a response to me. But I would say, since none of us have had time to really look at this, and also given the fact that it is actually now nearly 6:15, and we're keeping folks who have been here since very early this morning here very late, that we talk about this next month.
I'll make a motion to do that, to put it to next month.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and we have a second to table discussion of this item to the July meeting. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed. The second thing that we had to discuss was another well, basically to discuss is the brochure that we have been working on. The last time we talked about this, yeah, it's upside down. I'm sure they won't print it like that. The last time we spoke about this, we gave quite a list to city staff. Matter of fact, I believe we all kind of separately went to city staff with our thoughts about the brochure. Again, hoping that the July meeting is shorter. I would like some time personally to be able to digest this as opposed to just say it looks good. So once again,
I'll
yes,
make a
ma'am.
motion for us to go over it in the July meeting.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? No. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I think that wraps us up, ladies and gentlemen, and I believe Mr. Hollister would like to make a motion to adjourn. No.
Madam,
Come on, Mr. Hollister.
Madam
to
Chair,
adjourn.
Madam Chair, before you adjourn the meeting, I would like the opportunity to Casey's last meeting with the board today.
Didn't
And
you
I'd
know we
like-
have a party? Yeah, we just have to adjourn the meeting and then we go to
Still,
the
but
party.
I want to put on the record,
Only teasing.
that, we want to thank Casey for all his contributions, and I hope he had a good experience, taking back to school. Thank you.
We will seriously miss you. Right. He's leaving. He's going to go and get all of his many various degrees, and then he's going to take over the world, right? Excellent. Ladies, gentlemen, we have a motion to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye. We are adjourned.